start off by saying congratulations on the film. I had the chance to see it at MIF on the premiere of the film, and I was absolutely blown away. So congratulations.
Oh, great! Thanks so much. Yeah, IMAX was a really extraordinary way to see the film, and I think it was. It's great to see that format being used to screen films that aren't kind of your standard fare.
Yep.
Because it's such an immersive way to watch films. That screening actually came about from a conversation Alcázar and I had several years ago when I had actually tried to get Acute Misfortune, my first film, screened at IMAX, and we weren't able to get it through in the end. And I said to Al, we've got this extraordinary unused resource there, which is like the best picture and sound anywhere, and this incredibly immersive way to watch films. And he sat me down like a week before the MIF program was announced and told me that our film would be the first film to be screened for MIF at IMAX. So it was great. It was great.
I think it actually enhanced the viewing of this film as well. Like, this film has such an atmosphere to it that when you feel like you're right there and part of the film, I think it adds to that atmosphere even more so. What was that like for you as a filmmaker, being able to watch your film in that format?
Well, you try to make a film as immersive as you can, and certainly with something like this, we begin with breath, and you're essentially within someone's very personal, visceral experience, and the film is a very tense 2 hours. I just think that format is so immersive. But I think equally it's a film that will stand up really well for people watching it at home.
Yep.
Because it's a film that's really a personal meditation on violence and on because though the film is defined by an act of violence, it isn't a film about violence, but it is about the personal relationship to that and the aftermath of what happens, and about the way that it makes its way into our personal lives, and the way obviously that central character begins to bring that violence home.
Yep.
To not be able to separate himself, the barriers begin to collapse for him. So I think it'll be a visceral experience at home as well. But I hope people can watch it loud, because I'm extraordinarily proud of the photographic elements, but also particularly the score and the sound design, which I did with Andy Wright, and it's definitely a kind of immersive experience, isn't it?
Definitely, it is, definitely. And so where did the journey start for you with this film? Where did you first have the idea of The Stranger?
Well, Joel and I were actually in discussion about me playing one of the parts in his film Boy Erased several years ago, and during that conversation my first film was greenlit, and I couldn't come over and make the film. And Joel very generously said to me, well, when your film's finished, send it to me and I'll take a look at it. And so 2 years later, I sent him the completed version of Acute Misfortune, and he called me back later that day, and honestly, that same day, and said, whatever you want to do, let's find a way to do it together. He said, I'd love to find something to produce for you to direct. I'd love to find something acting for you to direct. And very quickly, we actually came to this material and to Kate Kiriaku's book, The Sting, What Became The Stranger. Joel had actually optioned that book several years before, and I think had considered a couple of different versions of the film, but it's very, very difficult material to come at.
Yeah.
It's very difficult material to find the right form for the film. And when you're dealing with real material like this, you do effectively have to become a kind of investigative reporter. You do have to familiarise yourself with the material at a very deep level, and then finding the right form for the film was always going to be very difficult. But actually, when I first read it, I said, I don't think I can do this. I think I was really afraid of it. I really didn't want to invite it into my home. I have a young son, and I just felt it was going to be too confronting. But then the more I looked at it, the more I looked at the material, I saw a film that wasn't defined by violence. It was actually a film defined by connection and by empathy. and that became really the key to unlocking the film. And, one thing that a lot of people talked about who worked on the film is how similar the film is to what was initially discussed from those conversations, because the film had to have this, what I feel is a very, very strong moral perspective about how to deal with violence and the reason to make a film like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said it was quite difficult to find the right form for this film. For the young screenwriters and the young filmmakers that are listening, did that mean that you did a lot of rewrites until you were happy with it, or was it something that
No. What it meant was I said to Joel, the way I'm going to write this film, I'm going to sit with this material, I'm going to research full time for about 6 months, and then I think I'll write it fairly quickly. So really, what it became was I was reading about 10 hours a day for 6 or 7 days a week for about 6 months, and trying to find the form, so carding the form, putting it into cards on a wall, and finding its way into sequences and then into acts, and ended up with this kind of 5-act structure for the film, which had multiple different perspectives, multiple protagonists, and in fact, multiple timelines, as well as parallel narratives. It was a difficult form to find, but I did that without putting pen to paper at all. And then I wrote the film in 6 days. The first sort of draft of the film was 6 days, and after that I got hospitalised with pneumonia. I don't think I realised quite how much of an effect it was having on me.
Yeah.
Until when I wrote it and I finished it, and the next day I got up and I couldn't walk. And I think that does have to do with just how difficult the material is, and it certainly gives you some deeper empathy into what it is to be, first of all, directly impacted by violence, which I really have no idea about, and I would never claim that knowledge or experience. But certainly those people have to deal with it secondhand. The type of people that this film's representing, who get up every day and devote years of their mental and physical health to resolving these sorts of cases for people they've never met. Yeah.
With writing the script having that kind of effect on you and your health, did it kind of scare you then, knowing that you were going to have to go on to set and direct as well?
It did, and I think the film actually kind of had that effect on all of us. We all felt a tremendous sense of responsibility to do with this film, and I think it became incredibly personal for everybody who worked on the film. I think we all felt that we needed to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and feel we did the right thing, and I feel that we did, and I feel that it's a film that we can very much stand behind, and especially for the cast who had to embody this story. For Jada Alberts playing Detective Rylett, Sean Harris and Joel Edgerton, and for all the cast. I mean, it's a tremendous responsibility, but it's also something that you do together, and it is the formation of a community. It's something, and it's created extraordinarily strong bonds between all of us.
Now, I'm trying to ask this question without giving away spoilers, but when you talked about doing research before, did you go and talk to people who have the same kind of work as Mark did in the film to find out what that impact is on them, especially when they're around things like this and around violence so often?
Yeah, we'll never be able to talk about the way that this film was actually made, but I can say that people who are involved in this sort of work have seen the film and been involved and can attest to how accurate it is. That was essential, as well as the access that Kate Kiriakou, the author of The Sting, was able to, the book that the film is based on, that she was able to lend, the expertise that she was able to lend to the film was, really invaluable. And I just don't think you could tell a story like this in a kind of half-cocked way. I think it'd be kind of unconscionable, actually, to guesstimate you know. So, I mean, I don't know, invent drama.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I think it's something that I think in the end is evidenced by the fact that the film works. But it was certainly, you know, when you reflect on it, it's a really unorthodox way to tell a story like this, to make a film about this where there is no representation of the victim whatsoever.
Yep.
No representation of any violence, no representation of the event that it's based around. That was just a determination taken very early on about how we wanted to make the film.
Yeah. Now, as you said, Joel was there from the very start. How did you go about casting around him? Was he always earmarked to play Mark? And then how did you go about casting around that, if that was the case?
Yeah, that was the nature of our discussion, was that he was always going to play that part. I mean, I think he, in his body of work, has shown a lot of interest in that sort of material, and I felt like it could push him into a different place. And I'm not interested in just having an uncritical eye on your kind of protagonist. Like, you want a complex, conflicted person, and I felt that there was something there with Joel, and the fact that what that character has to do in the film is to mirror this person that he can't get far enough away from.
Yep.
To effectively turn into this person and in some way begin to appreciate him physically and psychologically. And when we thought about, well, who would be the most, you know, threatening, difficult, thorny, intelligent presence to stand opposite, Sean Harris's name came to the fore very, very early on. And I'd known Sean's work for years, just as a kind of cinephile. I think I first probably became aware of him in playing Ian Curtis, lead singer of Joy Division in 24 Hour Party People.
Yep.
And Sean just Sean kind of cuts through the screen, you know. He feels so present in his work, and I think his work speaks for itself in the film. I mean, look, I'm biased because it's a film that we all threw ourselves into over a period of many years. But Sean prepared for over a year to play this part. Joel prepared for about 2, all told, in discussion, research, and a year's work building that relationship with my son, who plays his son. Yep. In the film as well. But I think it's their strongest work on film. I just think I watched Joel and Sean both just transform, and it was something that I think I demanded of them and pushed them toward, but they also gave it willingly and met me every step of the way. And I just watched them change on a kind of molecular level, and it didn't necessarily make it an easy shoot. It was a confronting shoot, and a shoot that held a lot of tension. And I think you can feel that in the film. You can feel the reality in the film of what it is to be in such a claustrophobic environment with those two men in a film that's based entirely on lies, a relationship built entirely on lies.
Definitely. I was going to ask that, with a film that is so confronting, how do you protect your cast and crew on set? I know a lot of the young filmmakers listening would be interested in that. Like, do you go out of the way to make sure that everybody's okay at the end of the day, or how do you go about doing that?
You certainly do, and I think that probably applies more to people that are on the periphery when you have extras on set and that sort of thing. There was certainly a couple of scenes. There's not a lot of them because a lot of the tension and the subject matter of the film is buried throughout. So it's sort of held internally in the characters. You're not talking about overt material except for a few scenes, and certainly where that involved extras. You know, we were really transparent about what the film was dealing with, and gave everybody an opportunity to engage or to excuse themselves if they needed to at any time. You certainly want to make sure people are protected when you're dealing with material like this. But really, for those central parts, I mean, I think it's really important to get consent and consensus and clarity all long beforehand. If those are not conversations you want to be having when you're on set making a film. The demands of film are always the same. Film is always going to exist in a tension between what it's trying to accomplish and the resources that it has. And even though this film is a larger budget Australian film, we were getting pulled apart by horses in the making of this movie. We had days we were shooting 8 scenes on this film, and that's not a comfortable, ratio. That's not a comfortable thing to realise. And it means that the film is made under a sense of pressure. It meant we had to be extraordinarily well prepared. So we had to know that people were protected and on side and understood the film very deeply, well before the shooting began.
Definitely. Now, I know we are running out of time very quickly, so I've just got 2 quick questions for you. First of all, I put this film up there alongside films that I love, films like The Square, Joel's film, Knit Ram. Why do you think it is that, as Aussie filmmakers, we're so good at making films like this that tell tough stories and do it in such a way that audiences walk away feeling that they've seen a masterpiece of a film?
I don't know that I could speak to. It's interesting because as a genre, when you break apart, the lineage of Australian crime cinema, it's actually an extraordinarily diverse body of work. Like, I think there's a very clear through line through something like Justin's films, like Snowtown and Nitram, but actually they stand outside a lot of that history in the kind of clarity of their intention and what he is trying to do and what he achieves with performance. But I suppose a film like Rowan Woods' The Boys, which was produced by John Maynard and Robert Connolly, I think it came out, it must be early 90s. The Boys really set the tone around a kind of gritty, social realist, kitchen sink version of a film that led toward an inevitable act of violence and then concludes leaving with you in that kind of suspended state that takes place, around that act of violence, that sense of finality. For me, like, my relationship to that certainly has to do with the fact that, from my personal perspective, we live in a country that's been defined by violence. It's a hidden violence. We're aware of it, but we can't reconcile ourselves to it. And it presents us with a lack of resolution.
Definitely, yeah.
And a need for resolution. What probably delineates this film to a certain extent is that there's no violence in the film.
Yeah.
The film is a pressurized environment in the wake of violence, and in a lot of ways, it's a film about an attempt to make meaning when violence sort of threatens to render things meaningless.
Definitely. Well, Thomas, to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there before they head out to cinemas to see The Stranger?
I suppose all I could say is take a deep breath, and I hope that the film is in some way cathartic and has an effect on them.